Hey YouTube, Joeboy here. So, One Piece chapter 1087 is out. If you guys haven't checked out that chapter yet, I suggest that you do so because I will be spoiling you. But now that you have, let's begin. I expect that this is going to be a relatively short chapter review, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that I'm not really sure what to think. Is Garp really about to die? Obviously that's what we should be thinking, and when this kind of thing happens, I try to figure it out, like what do I think is really going to happen? What fits best? Right or wrong, I usually have a strong opinion. But yeah, I really don't know. On one hand, I kind of always expected Garp to die. I didn't know when, of course, but Garp is a part of the old generation. Like Whitebeard, like Roger, his time will draw to a close. So I 100% believe in the concept of Garp's death. And frankly, that alone adds a ton of weight to what's happening right now, because, you know, that's a problem from time to time in the story, specifically regarding the Straw Hats. It's like, if the Straw Hats really going to die? No. So Oda can tease it all he likes, but I'm not going to fully buy into it. But with Garp, absolutely I do. And let's just be honest here, in a lot of videos recently, I've talked about the parallels pre and post time skip. And when we got the very first chapter of Garp in Hachinosu, I thought, man, this reminds me of Marineford. It just gave me that same feeling. Why or how, it doesn't matter. I had that feeling. And then in this chapter, I mean, look, it feels like Whitebeard. It just does. Now, to be fair, it doesn't live up to the Whitebeard moment at all. It was so much more convoluted in Marineford because Akainu had to trick Squard into stabbing his own captain. In this case, Garp, or Garp's allies, were tricked, and Shiryu was invisible. But the end result is the same. Oda's hammering in that Garp today is not the same as what Garp once was. He's getting weak, he's getting old, he's losing his edge. And the end result of that is a sword through the gut. There's absolutely no doubt that this comparison is intentional. And even when talking about how the whole thing with Squard was that Akainu turned an ally into an enemy, set him against Whitebeard. Well, you know, maybe Aokiji wasn't the one to actually stab Garp, but Aokiji is the former child, the son. And even if he isn't the one to do it, his actions have made this possible. Along with the parallels pre and post time skip that we love to talk about, right, we also love to talk about inversions. I want you guys to understand, I talk about this a lot and I feel kind of self-conscious of it sometimes, like, look, I'm talking about this too much, but it's really like vital to what Oda is doing in the story, and this chapter encapsulates that like perfectly. What's already happened in One Piece is inspiring what's happening in One Piece currently, but it's not all the same. Oda makes purposeful inversions for a number of different reasons. After Squard stabs Whitebeard, Whitebeard hugs him and said, "You're a fool, but I still love you." And in the face of Aokiji's betrayal, Garp says that he's excommunicated. "You foolish student." Now, I'm not all that sure that Garp and Whitebeard are really that different and that we should read into this too much, but certainly there are differences in characters, and this comparison helps establish that. But at the same time, and the point that I really want to get to, is that we're having a Marineford moment, and Garp is living out Whitebeard's past to an extent. But is it going to be the same, or is it going to be different? Because Oda's done it both ways. Oda can twist what he wants, where he wants. And for me, it makes it hard to know what to believe, which is really not a bad thing. Like, we know that events are repeating, but because we don't know in which way, the story is just as unpredictable as it was during Marineford. So yeah, parallels are important, inversions are important, and the third major concept here is escalations. That's another thing that this is accomplishing, and it's, I mean, very obvious when it comes to the Blackbeard pirates. They were largely introduced during Marineford, and truthfully, the members didn't stand out. This is something that Oda absolutely has to do before the end of the story, is to hype up the Blackbeard pirates, the captains, the Titanic 10, individually. They need feats. And for me, this is another way to validate the potential of Garp's death, because it's possible that the Blackbeard pirates need this victory. That was one of the major issues with the Big Mom pirates, issues I should say, that substantiate them as credible villains, is failure all the time. And of course, I always try to think about the narrative flow, like, you know, how can Oda deliver on this so that it gives us, like, peak One Piece feelings. Essentially, what is the point of all of this if Garp simply escapes and lives? If he lives, I would guess that we could presume that Aokiji would be responsible for that, so how does it serve the story for Oda to be very explicit that Aokiji has a foot half in and half out with the Blackbeard pirates? Speaking of parallels, right, there was the encounter of Luffy and Garp in Marineford, where Garp intended to stand for justice, right, and Luffy was a pirate, he's the bad guy, and Garp needed to stop him, and when the moment came, Garp couldn't do it, and he essentially allowed Luffy to defeat him. But this is where a parallel becomes an inversion, because Aokiji here is playing the role of Garp. I think that if Aokiji and Garp have a straight up fight right now, 100% to the death, Aokiji will win. Just the same as if Garp and Luffy had a fight during Marineford, Garp would have won. In the flashback during the chapter, this is something that Oda is trying to establish, that Aokiji really became an equal to Garp. Maybe the student hasn't surpassed the teacher, but certainly the student has grown to equal the teacher. And time has done the rest. So Garp entered Hachinosu the very same way that Luffy entered Marineford. Very spectacular, from the sky, right? And now Garp has infiltrated the base of the enemy in order to rescue his friend, which is what Luffy did during Marineford. It's not all the same, right? Because rather than being the upshot youth trying to make their name, Garp is the exact opposite of this legendary hero past his prime. But regardless of the differences, it's similarly true that the deck is stacked against him. Just the same as Garp in Marineford, Aokiji has the power to end it. And regardless of what you think about him, I think that it is guaranteed that he is considering this as it is happening. Aokiji has a decision to make. And that's the question that we should be asking right now. Is this a parallel or is this an inversion? Does he stand down and let Garp win? Or does he kill him? Directly or indirectly, it really doesn't matter to me, because Aokiji, right now, Garp's death, if Garp dies, that's on him. And I would just say, guys, I guess it's my opinion that Aokiji letting Garp win at this stage wouldn't have near the amount of impact of Aokiji delivering the killing blow. Sometimes the question is really just that simple, like what would be cooler? What would be more interesting? And maybe that's what's more likely. But I also want you guys to have a full perspective, right? Don't be limited in your thoughts just because it seems as if Aokiji's playing the role of Garp and Garp is Luffy. Well, maybe an inversion here is that in Marineford, Whitebeard was past his prime and destined to die. He was literally sick. Whereas Oda can flip that here with Garp, where Garp establishes he's not done yet. He's still one of the baddest dudes on the planet. Now, whether this is likely or not, the conversation gets kind of convoluted. How does this serve the story? Taking away from the Blackbeard pirates, hyping up Garp, is that something that feels like necessary to what's going to happen in the future, right? Like, is Garp really a character that needs to be highlighted like this at this stage? I don't know. But I certainly half want to believe, whether it's this or something else, Garp escapes. Conversations between Garp and Luffy, having Garp die here away from Luffy, I don't know if I want that. All of this is incredibly sudden as well. And this doesn't seem like it's something that's setting up for 10 more chapters. It seems like the conclusion to all of this is going to be contained within, one chapter, possibly two, but I doubt it. So while everything about this is incredibly hype, it's exciting, it's cool, Garp is a pretty big character to kill in a 2-chapter events around the world sequence. To give you another parallel, all of these events that are taking place right now, but specifically Garp and Hachinosu, is reminiscent of Blackbeard and Ace chapters at the end of Enies Lobby. Just around the world, right? Events that matter to characters that are present. Blackbeard fights Ace. It's contained within 1 or 2 chapters. The whole purpose of this is to start setting up Blackbeard as an antagonist. Just as right now, it seems like we're setting up the Blackbeard pirates, the crew, as antagonists. But of course, Ace didn't die, which was a big difference. So it's possible that we should be thinking about it in this way, not whether or not Garp lives or dies, but how Oda will utilize this in order to shape the narrative going forward. Again, another parallel worth considering. Seriously guys, these are everywhere, right? But a big thing in Aokiji's past was him and Jaguar D Saw on opposite sides, but yet at the same time friends, allies. Aokiji couldn't deal the killing blow. but he certainly did his best to fake it. It seems very likely to me that Aokiji is going to be put under a similar circumstance here, and again, is it a parallel or is it an inversion? Does he intentionally kill Garp, or does he go through the process of trying to time capsule him, but then Garp is killed by somebody else? The ice is shattered. Or do they make a trade, Kobe for Garp? Because I'm sure that Kobe is going to escape, so instead their chess piece, their pawn, their prisoner to barter with is Garp. I had a whole video talking about Aokiji's character. I'll go ahead and link it in the description. Personally, I think that this video is great. The wording of it, it's a little bit not concise, which is typical of my content, but at the same time, we discuss a lot of things that I think are important to discuss within it. I think it's highly worth your time. But in that video, we ponder what was the reason why Aokiji spared Jaguar D. Saul, and from other contexts within the story, it appears as if Aokiji, for a number of years, doesn't know what to believe. He is lazy justice, right? But it's not true. It's a misnomer. I think Aokiji projects this laziness to cover up his indecisiveness. He simply doesn't know what to believe for most of the story. He's literally frozen. And it's because of this that he accomplishes nothing. Lazy. Jaguar D. Saul was his friend and believes something so wholeheartedly that moves Aokiji. Like, what if Saul is right and he's wrong? What if killing him is wrong? So Aokiji can't do it. And then he sets Robin free and he watches her. He watches her because he wants to know whether Saul was right or wrong. Saul stated very clearly that Robin would one day find family. Aokiji waited for it to happen. But I think that you should consider this mentality of Aokiji's to be past tense. Something has changed, and Doflamingo alluded to that post-time skip. Aokiji went from a guy who couldn't decide to do anything to joining the Blackbeard Pirates. That in and of itself is a big step for him. Like a man who's finally decided what he wants and how he intends to get it. But yeah, the long story short here is in that video, I speculate that Aokiji is a legitimate member of Blackbeard's crew, that maybe Aokiji and Blackbeard aren't friends, right? But Blackbeard is your foil of Luffy, the dark version of Luffy. Luffy's great powers making his enemies his friends, and I think Blackbeard has the same ability, or at least he can make his enemies his subordinates. And the key concept really which combines Blackbeard and Luffy in this regard is they both enable other people to achieve their dreams. Both crews are a collection of individuals who all have their own personal objective and reason to travel together and fight together. So the same thing is true of Aokiji and Blackbeard. Essentially, Aokiji needs Blackbeard. So if we assume this to be true, Aokiji has the very real possibility of sabotaging himself here with Garp. If he chooses to spare Garp, lets Garp escape, it's possible that he's no longer trusted. I think that if Aokiji wavers in any regard, Blackbeard would be able to sense that or understand that. The question becomes, what exactly would Aokiji do in order to achieve his dreams, whatever those might be? This character, who has spent the majority of his life uncertain, has finally decided to be certain, to just do something. So it would feel somewhat like a step backwards if he sets aside his own agenda for Garp. And this is something that Oda has addressed, again in Film Z, right? And I think Film Z might have been straight up foreshadowing of what's taking place right now, because Oda created a character, Zephyr, for that movie, and Zephyr was pretty much your Garp parallel, right? Inserted in movie version. He had a relationship specifically with Aokiji. Just the same as Garp, Zephyr was a mentor figure. And their interaction within that movie is like this conversation we're having right now. Should Aokiji fight him or not? And my interpretation is that Aokiji really wanted to fight Z, but at the time couldn't. Obviously now he can, because a fight is literally happening. Anyway guys, I think that I've filled your brain with enough questions at this point in time. We have enough information here to understand what's happening and the implications of everything. Do I think that it's possible that Aokiji is responsible for Garp's death? Yes, I do. Do I want it to happen? No, not really. I think the safest thing that Oda could possibly do is have Aokiji in some clever way save Garp, and Garp becomes maybe a prisoner and utilized sometime later so that he's brought back into the story, similar to maybe like Ace. The thing I really like most about this is the fact that other people are there and present to witness Garp's death, which to me is a noteworthy thing, something that certainly I would have predicted beforehand would have been an objective Oda would have had for Garp's death. Just like Whitebeard, Garp dies, and it's a spectacle for the entire world to observe, including every character who should matter to Garp and vice versa. But the absolute biggest doom thing Oda could do is have Aokiji kill Garp. That would be utter insanity, and I kind of like that too. Then you get to create a sort of what-if scenario, right? Like, what if Ace doesn't die immediately after Whitebeard and Marineford? In this case, the relationship between Ace and Whitebeard is like Koby and Garp. Garp dies here, but Koby obviously does not. His journey continues. But yeah, you can obviously tell, right? I'm not entirely sure what to believe. Also, just, you know, other things could happen as well. Oda is a creative mastermind, and we're talking about all these things that are previously set up, but a curveball absolutely could fit in there as well. The only thing I'm 100% certain of is that no matter which way Oda decides to take this, undoubtedly it's going to be the correct choice, because from every angle that I could possibly imagine this, it's awesome. But yeah, guys, it's amazing that, you know, we literally have one major thing to talk about with this chapter. The entire chapter was focused on one thing, which is, quite frankly, a breath of fresh air. Not that I don't enjoy it any less, it's just when Oda switches topics all the time, that's when you get to like 50-minute reviews, but here it's all pretty well self-contained. I love all of the powers of the Blackbeard pirates. Avalo Pizarro's island fruit, that power, just the aesthetic of it, the visual of it is incredible. I'm curious as to how the Marines are going to be able to escape. That's the cliffhanger that we're left off on, and I think of course they do escape, but it's not entirely clear how that happens. That's exciting. My best guess is simply that the Marines that Garp recruited, you know, those that he trained and looked over, it's their time to shine. It's their time to show what they're capable of. One of them asks, you know, am I the future too? And I think, you know, we didn't get an answer to that, but I think yes. It's like when Squard is unsure whether or not he is family to the same level that Ace is. Yes, Ace is treated different. Yes, Whitebeard thinks Ace is more important. Just like Garp probably thinks Koby is more important, but everyone else was Whitebeard's family too, and everyone else is the future of the Marines as well, in Garp's opinion. Maybe not to defeat Blackbeard or the Blackbeard pirates, but escape is step number one. I think probably the biggest character drop from Garp in this chapter is Koby is freaking out and Garp's like, look, chill out, dude. Don't lose your composure. Justice will prevail. Which tells you that Garp probably believes in fate. And it quite frankly explains a lot about him. We already know that Garp does not like the Celestial Dragons at all. Yet the Marines kind of fight for and defend the Celestial Dragons, so how does that make sense? Well, Garp believes in fate. Justice will prevail. He's performing his role and believes that the organization which he is fighting for is the ultimate good in the world, and it will all work out. I honestly found myself a little bit emotional though, seeing that flashback of Aokiji and Garp. Just, I don't know, man, like, see an old man's face who's experienced so much and where he was and where he is now, potentially, you know, probably on his last legs. Damn, that works every time. And really what Oda has accomplished with Garp as a Marine, but also like Luffy, valuing freedom so much, Garp found his freedom by joining the Marines. Really, what Luffy is doing is no different than what Garp did. He's traveling around the seas and fighting bad guys, right? There's obviously a little bit more structure behind Garp, but Garp really, you know, didn't let that constrain him all that much. So this concept of a Marine by itself is a great idea. And I just want to acknowledge that. Like the perfect blend of a peace main pirate and a Marine, which, you know, if you read the original one-shot versions of One Piece, like the original Garp was a pirate. And I really don't think that that changed. The other thing which really seems to define Luffy's interest is his adventure, right? And I'm sure that Garp has done quite a lot of adventuring over his life, just simply doing it on a Marine ship. But like I said, the fact that Garp has managed all of this while being in the Marines at the same time and hasn't let that constrain him in any way just makes his entire existence all the more Chad. But anyway, guys, what comes from all of this, we will find out very shortly. I literally cannot wait. As always, I'm curious as to what you guys think, whether you know something from the chapter that I might have missed. Just share your thoughts. Remember to check out my book, The Boons, Volume 1 and 2 is out. Links in the descriptions as well as pinned in the comments. And if you guys happen to read it, please leave a review. Let other people know what you thought about it. Like the video, subscribe, click the bell to be notified, join the squad. And as always, guys, have a wonderful day.